Hi, I'm your host Dave Kemp, and this is Future Ear Radio. Each episode, we're breaking down one new thing, one cool new finding that's happening in the world of hearables, the world of voice technology. How are these worlds starting to intersect? How are these worlds starting to collide? What cool things are going to come from this intersection of technology? Without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, so we're joined here today by Geoff Cooling. Geoff, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
I've been involved with the hearing aid world since about 2006. In the recent past, I am one of the co-editors of Hearing Aid Now, which is an advice site for consumers globally. We have a pretty much global audience. A lot of people in America read us, a lot of people in the UK and Australia, and pretty much the rest of the English-speaking world. Our main trust is to give independent and honest advice about the hearing aids that are available across the world, but also the hearing care and the people who provide them. We see our position as a consumer advocate, but also an advocate for independent hearing healthcare globally.
Yeah, no, I think that, for the listeners here who maybe aren't in the hearing healthcare space, Geoff is, he's one of the people that runs one of the most widely read publications, in the hearing healthcare space, located you guys are in Ireland, right?
I'm in Ireland. My business partner's in the UK.
Okay. What part of Ireland are you in?
Dublin.
Okay, Dublin. Nice. So
only part of Ireland that matters, mate.
The only one that matters. That's right. So the reason that I wanted to bring Geoff on today is that Geoff, for those that are in the industry, will recognize Geoff Cooling as one of the, probably one of the most on the forefront of thought leadership and just putting out a whole lot of material as to, how the industry is changing, evolving. And, as we enter into 2020, I think it was Geoff actually that said this, that we are due for more change in the next 5 years than we felt in the previous 50 years. So let's start right there. Can you speak a little bit about this? And then I can obviously touch on how in the US in particular that this is really going to be applicable to, but this notion that we're sort of at the cusp of just like a pretty big tsunami of change within the hearing healthcare industry.
I think it's a confluence of many different things. These things have come together, and that's technological advancement, it's consumer wants and needs, it's also, the idea of this healthy aged. Lots of these things are kind of driving the current future of hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's driving that future as well is hearables. Mm-hmm. So we all know, or I think we're all aware, that the ear is probably the next battleground for the tech companies, and primarily because of voice first.
Yep.
So it makes perfect sense for ear level devices to be voice first devices that work all day long in your ear, give you the information that you need, also answer the questions that you need, etc., etc. It feels to me like we're moving away from the screen. We're moving away from the phone in our hands, and we're moving towards voice and spoken instructions. I think that as well plays into the evolution of hearing aids and the changing face of the hearing aid space primarily. Of course, OTC in the States is having a major effect, or will have a major effect, on hearing aid provision moving forward. But I think it's consumer pressure and technological advancement that's really, I think, bringing the pressure to where it is right now.
Yeah, no, well said. I agree with you. I think that from the technology standpoint, you're right that, like, Amazon, Apple, Samsung, Google, they're looking at our ears as like, okay, we've overly saturated all of our customers' eyes. So how can we derive and monetize more attention? Oh, okay, how about we go after their ears? And that's on it. That's obviously a little bit of a cynical way to put it, but as a result of the AirPods effect is kind of the way that I think about it. You have all of these major tech companies are realizing that there's legacy use cases like streaming music, streaming audio, but I think they're realizing that when you have these intelligent devices at the ear level, it's opening up a lot of really interesting use cases. And as a byproduct of these massive tech companies coming into the space, there's a sort of like a windfall of innovation that's bleeding into this hearing healthcare industry. A lot of the hearing aids today, a lot of the Bluetooth hearing aids can take advantage of a lot of the same things that AirPods and Echo Buds and these different devices are sort of blazing a trail on. So I agree with you. I think on the technology side, there's a lot of change that's happening. And then on the accessibility side, there's a lot that's happening too. Like in the US, for example, the over-the-counter hearing aid law passed, I think, a year ago, and it's just been moving through all of the different steps. And now it's in its last step where it's been signed into law. The FDA has it in their hands. They're drafting up the guidelines, and it's estimated by the summer of 2020 in the US, you'll now be able to buy hearing aids over the counter. And because of that, there's going to be a whole slew of new suppliers. There's probably going to be the current existing manufacturers that have over the counter level options. So, in terms of how hearing aids have been purchased and how they'll be purchased moving forward, that's going to change a lot too, because you've really created a new avenue in which people can access these devices.
Yeah, agreed. I think that provision will dramatically change over the next even year. I would say we've already seen some provision changes with online providers moving forward with self-fitting hearing aids, and I think that we'll see much more of that. I think as soon as the OTC regulations are passed, I think we'll see a glut of devices hitting the marketplace, self-fitting,
Mm-hmm.
purchased online, purchased in pharmacies, purchased over the counter in electronic stores. I think at the beginning, a lot of them will probably be rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that will change though, and I think it will change dramatically moving forward. The mainstream hearing aid manufacturers, I mean, they find all of this difficult because if they go down the OTC route, they have an existing market channel that they have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think that actually probably one of the best things that could happen for consumers would be that mainstream manufacturers move into the OTC channel,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that they understand hearing aids very well. They
Mm-hmm.
understand the difficulties inherently involved in the provision of hearing aids.
Totally.
And they also understand the needs and wants of consumers and how they change from when they are at the prospect stage to
Mm-hmm.
when they are at the user stage. A prospect user, all they're really concerned about is price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As soon as a prospect user becomes an experienced user,
Mm-hmm.
they're more concerned about quality, reliability, and actually service and aftercare. And I think if the mainstream manufacturers became involved, we would see what's called a blended model,
Mm-hmm.
so that these OTC devices would be provided in the same way as other OTC devices, but there would always be an option moving forward to see a professional.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that gets lost up in this explosion of technology. And I mean, for me, I'm a nerd. I really, I love technology, right? But and the whole excitement of it. But you have to be cognizant of the ongoing needs of users.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that mainstream hearing aid manufacturers are cognizant of those needs. And I think for somebody like, say for instance, Amazon or Apple, they suddenly decided, hell, we're going to do hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that'll ever happen. But
Mm-hmm.
say they do decide to do that, it's going to be a massive learning curve for those guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've never had to worry about wax.
Yeah.
They've never had to worry about wet ears.
Mm-hmm.
The devices that they provide are really only designed to be worn for 3 or 4 hours every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so all of a sudden you have to learn about a device that has to work 24 hours, or we'll say 12 to 14 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
It has to sit in a wet, waxy ear.
Yeah.
And it has to last for at least 2 years. You know, as I said, that's a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So, not that they wouldn't learn, but yeah, no, I think that moving forward, the way, I don't ever think, people have asked me, you know, what will happen to professionals? What will happen to audiologists?
Mm-hmm.
I really do think that what audiologists do will change.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say that we as a profession may no longer sell hearing aids.
Interesting.
You know, that's a possibility. I do believe that moving forward, that could be a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
We don't sell hearing aids, but we sell service packages to provide the care, the fitting, the verification that's needed for users to get the very best out of the devices that they have.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point, and it's jarring. I mean, obviously that disrupts everything. I think every business model that the professional community has is in some way tied to selling hearing aids. So, we're talking about true radical transformation. But to your point, I think that it speaks to a larger theme and a larger trend that's really, really becoming prominent within the consumer's mindset, and that is just that consumers, they want a level of do it yourself, and they want to be able to be empowered with their tools and have the ability to program their devices, I guess, to a degree. But really, I think while that's a thing, I also think that there is an element of wanting an expert, and not just an expert with this, but an expert in everything. And that's like, to your point, with the service packages, the way I see this is, there was a really good quote that was in the hearing review a while back. I don't remember who it was, but it was something to the effect of like, for hearing care professionals lamenting the dwindling cost of the product, they should also recognize the increasing demand for their services, which is being a provision of knowledgeable assistance. And I think that is on the money, because as there becomes more and more options out there, and as this market becomes more convoluted and confusing, people will look for answers. They're going to look for experts. And I think that that's really where the professional is best positioned, is to be that provision of knowledgeable assistance. And that goes beyond just the fitting of hearing aids, but it goes through all of the oral rehabilitation that's involved with treating one's hearing loss. It's speaking to all of the new value that you can get out of these devices, walking them through the things that you can do with a voice assistant, walking them through the various biometric sensors and the different readouts that you can get from these devices. They'll almost need to be consultants as to the value that you can get out of this device that goes beyond just the traditional hearing aid value proposition.
Yeah, no, listen, I think I really agree with you. I wrote an article a couple of years ago about, biometric sensors on hearing aids and how that would change or could change our profession. But, I said at the time, we need to, carpe diem. We need to seize the day here. We need to shape this moving forward. So, and you're dead right. You mentioned biometric sensors. What I felt was all of these readings, et cetera, we're talking about true healthables. We're not talking about toys. We're talking about true health data. Yeah. And that, we were the ones who would not control that data as such, but coordinate that data. And that allowed us our profession to be part of and center of a primary healthcare team, because
Yes.
that data has to be passed to the team, right? And I mean, there's so many opportunities. Okay,
Yeah.
as I said, maybe we're not going to sell hearing aids, right? And
Mhm.
I don't think that will quite happen. I think what may well happen is there may be a reduction in the amount of hearing aids that we sell.
Right.
Okay, and I think that our business will move much more towards providing the service that we do, um, but actually charging for that service as opposed to the
Right.
way we do right now. So what we do right now, and it's something that I've railed against for years, is we charge a lump sum, and the consumer thinks that's for the hearing aid. Okay, and their attitude is, how can an electronic device
Hmm.
so tiny be this amount of money? Okay, and then we say to them, oh well, we do service and we do fitting and we look
Hmm.
after you, etc., etc., etc. And it's that fact, even the way we speak about it,
Yeah.
it's like an afterthought,
Yeah.
you know. And I've said it for many years. We need, as a profession, to be putting forward, front and forward, the service,
Yeah.
and that the true fact is that the product, the hearing aid, okay, is actually an addition to the service.
Hmm.
Because in order for people to get the very best out of hearing aids, the very best possible, they need somebody to test them. They need somebody to fit those hearing aids exceptionally well
Hmm.
and validate or verify that they're actually working properly.
Right.
Then they need somebody to train them how to use them,
Hmm.
how to take care of them, and on an ongoing basis, see them to ensure that they're excelling at hearing better. Okay? It's not a one-time deal. This is something that has to happen again and again and again, all the way
Hmm.
through the life of that device.
Right.
And I don't think we've ever been good at explaining
Yeah.
that. But I do think, as I said, I think that's probably the basis for the change in our profession. It'll be service based.
Yeah, no, well said. I think that that pretty much puts a bow on it. I think that if there were, if you were to sum up how this is going, in terms of there being more change in the next 5 years than there were in the past 50, I think you're exactly right. It's that the business model's flipping, and it's slowly flipping right now, but I think it's going to suddenly flip. And to your point, I don't necessarily think this means that like hearing care professionals are going to stop distributing hearing aids. I don't think that's the case. I think that especially for the moderate to the profoundly severe, the people that are truly in need of a hearing device, I think that they will go through the professional. But I think that as OTC really evolves and matures, a lot of people that are on the lower end of the spectrum, of the hearing loss spectrum, will sort of service themselves through an app or something like that. So the bigger question, I think, when it comes to that dichotomy is like, do you then have the professional involved early on in that process where you're at least establishing that relationship so that you're going to be a part of their journey, because we all know that hearing loss isn't something that just magically gets fixed. It's like you just gradually continue to lose it over time. So it's all just a challenge of how do you preserve this as long as you possibly can. And that's where I think that the professional really comes in, is to be that, call it a coach, call it a guide or whatever. But, people will be able to more or less program the devices, I think, to a degree. But I think where the real value comes in is helping them to actually understand how it is that they can preserve their hearing and get the most out of the devices and get the most out of, the idea of having a computer in your ear.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, it's up to us in the profession to ensure that we remain in that position. So, we can decide to do one of two things. Okay. We can decide they're buying hearing aids online and we're going to take our ball and go home. Right.
Mhm.
Or, right, we can say, okay, we can't stop change. We can't stop consumer wants and needs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But if we are the professionals that we say we are, we can help and guide. And that means we have to be involved from the start, from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So when these devices hit the market, when these devices start to come out in the next year, we need to be able, ready to talk about them. We should be preempting the delivery of these. We should be discussing how we can help if you have them, etc., etc. I mean, our problem is that because we haven't been very good at communicating our worth,
Mm-hmm.
right? The feeling, particularly in the US, the feeling is that we're greedy gougers.
Mm.
Okay? And and in my experience, it's simply not true.
No, it's not.
You know, we're not. Yes, we charge quite a bit for a product, okay, but it's actually not the product that you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ongoing relationship, ongoing care and service, right?
Yeah.
We've never been good at communicating that, but it's our fault that we haven't, right?
Yeah.
So there's no point pointing the finger at the consumers, and there's no point pointing the finger at manufacturers. We have to stand up and take responsibility for what's happened, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot. I think it'll be a bit of a long road back for us because, you know, most of the consumers are going to say, yeah, you're going to say that anyway.
Yeah.
But I think as there's a cohort of consumers out there right now who in 12 months' time will have something in their ear that they probably purchased online.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And they will begin to understand why, whilst the product is pretty good, there's a bit more to it than just the product. Okay?
Yeah.
And we need to position ourselves for them to be able and confident to come and see us to discuss it, or to see if we can fix it, or to see what we can do.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there's many of us have been talking like this for the last 10 or 15 years. Unfortunately, only a few listens. But you know, people really need to wake up now, because otherwise our profession is going to get steamrollered. You know, that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think that, I think you made a really interesting point there, which is that, it's not as if there isn't, the dollar figure that, hearing aids today fetch. I think the problem isn't that there is a disconnect between the price and what the people are receiving. I think they're getting the value of that, but it's how that is positioned. You're just, to your point, it's here's the device, and oh, by the way, you get 2 years of me, as like the service provider. Whereas it should almost be flipped. It should be, you get all of this great service and all this great hands-on, like, guided approach that I'm going to give you. And here's the device that we're going to work with, and I'm not a provider, so I'm just, speaking from my experience of working with a lot of them, but it would seem that that's going to be the biggest challenge, is to reconfigure the whole way in which the offering is positioned to the consumer.
Yeah, I think that, I do. I think it's a challenge. I think, though, that, sites like Hearing Aid Now and other sites have tried to begin that journey. So although, we talk, about the latest hearing aids, etc., we also consistently talk about why you need them to be well fitted.
Yeah.
Why you need to go to somebody who offers best practice care.
Totally.
So I think that journey has begun. And I think many of the readers of Hearing Aid Now, and there's a lot of readers of Hearing Aid Now, understand that, or have begun to understand that the product isn't everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't listen. It's not going to be an easy road. It's probably going to be a long road, but I think it's a road that we need to start taking.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel that you know, we could become physiologists who just happen to do tests for people who are in medical danger.
Right.
I mean, that's how we could end up. You know, if the consumer doesn't want us involved, if the consumer doesn't see any need for us to be involved, well, then we won't be involved.
Mm.
And that's just the truth of it. So we need to try and reach out. We need to try and shape their thinking, and we need to do it right now.
Yeah. I agree with you, Geoff. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. It's been a really good discussion here with Geoff, and I think he's definitely speaking some truth here about, you know, what I think a lot of others have been thinking or even outwardly expressing within the industry. So, Geoff, thanks for the candid words and for coming on and sharing with everybody today.
No, it's a pleasure, Dave. Anytime.
All righty. See y'all. We'll see you next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Future Ear Radio. For more content like this, just head over to futureear.co, where you can read all the articles that I've been writing these past few years on the worlds of voice technology and hearables and how the two are beginning to intersect. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat with you next time.